Wow, Lamont, what a cool cup. It looks just like mine.
It's my favorite cup. It's so pretty.
You know what would be really cool?
Having a Lamont and Leah podcast sticker in the shape of our matching rainbow cups.
Yes, exactly that.
I'm Lamont, and my cup runneth over.
And I'm Leah. Flint, Michigan still doesn't have clean water.
And you're tuning into
The Lamont N Leah podcast.
So this is August, so it's National Back to School Month. Happy.
Thank God.
Yeah, and I'm actually going back to school. Happy Gay Uncle Day, because today is August 14th. Coming up on August 17th.
17th.
Coming up on August 16th, you have National Authenticity Day and National Rum Day. August 18th is Never Give Up Day. August 21st is Internet Self-Care Day, and you should totally tune into the next episode. August 23rd is World Water Week, and August 24th is the day that Lamont was born.
That's my favorite holiday.
So this is a special episode, like Leia's baby project. So today we're talking about National Water Quality Month from a Hawaiian perspective. So it's gonna be like National Water Quality Month and
Probably a lot of like Hawaiian background, cultural viewpoint.
what do we call it? I called it something else.
No. Hawaiian Perspective is what I wrote.
Oh, all right. Well, let's go get our guest.
All right. Let me see if I can channel my inner Lamont. Yeah. Welcome. And thank you for joining us on the Lamont and Leah podcast. Would you please take a moment to introduce yourself to our listening and viewer audience?
Hello, everybody. My name is Brittany Shambrella. For those of you following me on social media, I go by my middle name, Waipu ilani. I am a native Hawaiian living in the Hawaiian Islands, and most of my content does cover Hawaii issues. Thanks for having me today.
No problem. Thank you for actually joining us. I don't know. I was really worried when I was sending all these messages on TikTok because, like, I was like, who's going to read these and be like, yeah.
Well,
I feel that.
I'm like one of those people where I take actual messaging very seriously. I think it's just because I'm not really interested in the amount of followers I have, but actually cultivating relationship. And so I'm usually really quick to like weed out like the spammy requests that come in or just, random people following you. And I'm just like, look, I'm not here to entertain robots or trolley kind of people, right? I want to provide education and share information with people who are actually going to appreciate it and actually benefit from it. And, best case scenario, help spread that message, right? So when people contact me, usually for a variety of reasons, once I establish, like, you're a real person, you have a real question, like, I definitely want to make that offer, right? To just, oh, hey, yeah, let's have a conversation, let's talk about something. Just because I think if you don't talk about stuff, then nobody's gonna know, kind of a thing. Because definitely I've been in that situation where there was information that should have been accessible to me, but it wasn't. But if somebody had just opened their mouth and said something, I might have been in a very different place. So that's why I'm always eager to share information whenever I get it with others, just because you never know who you're helping just by saying something. So I'm glad that you reached out. It was very interesting offer. I haven't done a podcast before, so you are the first as well. for me. So
Yeah.
so
I'm so happy. I'm so happy this is your first podcast.
yeah.
This is my first podcast too.
So we'll start off strong then. We set the bar today.
No, that's all. I'm gonna actually steal everything you said. I'm gonna repost it. There you go. Because that's so true. Like, I usually don't care about numbers too. The only reason why I'm watching my subscriber count is because I'm trying to go live, and you have to have like 1,000 followers. So I'm just like,
yeah.
hurry up. That's the only thing I'm doing.
Yeah. Once you hit that 1K, then you're good.
Then I don't care anymore. I'm like, all right, cool.
Now we qualify.
That's all I want.
Yeah, there's so many creative, talented TikTok people out there. And I definitely try to reach out and talk to them. And sometimes they don't answer back, and it's probably because maybe that person's not real, or like they don't have the time, or like they're just being bombarded by so many messages. So.
Yeah. There's a few bigger, like, TikTokers?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That I, like, was trying to reach out to, but now they all have, like, agents and stuff, and I was like, oh, no thank you. That means I have to pay.
Yeah.
I cannot pay. I am broke. Which reminds me, if anyone wants to buy some stickers, we still sell them. Oh, great.
or contribute to our podcast.
That too.
Go to Linktree.
Alrighty. Let's get started. Let's talk about what we are talking about today, which is National Water Quality Month, which is this August. Have either of you heard of National Water Quality Month?
I have, because we've been planning this episode. but before then, no.
I'm gonna say probably the same for me. I believe that this exists, but is it something that they're advertising right now? No, because we have so many water issues right now. Like, it's kind of embarrassing. Oh, hey, yeah,
Exactly.
By the way, this is the month where we celebrate water. Yeah.
Yeah, like, so when Lamont, we try to, like, plan out what we're going to be talking about so that we don't have to do it. So we do it a few months in advance. And so we were both, like, looking up what the theme of each month was. And this popped up. And I was like, I've never heard of this before, but I believe it. It probably does exist. And it does. They actually have a website called nationalwaterqualitymonth.org that explains all of its history, why it was started. They even have a whole section of, like, what affects water quality and the things, like, the United States has in place in order to try and manage water quality. And they say right on their website, National Water Quality Month is dedicated to making the most of the relatively small amount of fresh water we have, because having clean water is vital to our individual health, our collective agricultural needs, and the needs of our environment.
Yes.
Thank you, Lamont. But no, that sounds about right. They also say that, there's a little quote I took off of the thing. It reminds us to take a moment to consider how important these water sources are, not just to humans, but also the other inhabitants of these ecosystems, whether it be fish that live in the waters or plants and animals that rely on these lakes and rivers for water just like we do. By thinking about the little things that you do on a daily basis that could have a negative effect on water quality, you'll be one step closer to making a difference.
And here on the Lamont N Leah podcast, we're all about making a difference.
Yes. I don't know who runs this website. It is a .org, so it's not like a .gov or anything. I think it might just be like a private group. Not really sure. But they have a whole section on, like, the history of water quality, particularly in the US. Backtrack just a little bit. I like that they also included that section about inhabitants of other ecosystems, and they mentioned fish and plants and animals and lakes and rivers, because I feel like a lot of people don't, like, particularly in the mainland United States, don't really think about where their water comes from.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like, I know a lot of people who are like surprised when they hear about like that we still use natural reservoirs and that like we're taking water from the lakes. They're like, "What do you mean from the lake? That's where I go boating." So I did not grow up in Hawaii. Like, yeah, technically I did not. Um, is there like anything taught in like the younger years, like elementary and everything about like where water comes from?
Well, I guess it would kind of depend on your education
Mm-hmm.
experience. Um, I have bounced around between like multiple schools between Oahu and the Big Island, mostly the Big Island. But here in Hawaii, because there's like such a variety of kinds of schooling that you can receive here, it really does depend. So obviously, if you're in public school, Department of Education, you're going to get probably the bare minimum when it comes to that kind of stuff. Um, let's just be very honest,
She's
right?
calling you out, part Department of Education. Get
Oh,
your stuff together.
yeah, me and DOE, we got beef. Like, but um, private school, depending on why it's private. Usually, religious private schools, they tend to excel out here. So there will probably be more of an emphasis on the conservative Christian stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they might try and sprinkle in some conservation or some Native Hawaiian values, which will probably incorporate some kind of environmental thing. So it would depend on that curriculum. But then you have the homeschoolers, you have the charter schools, you have the immersion schools, which will very likely have an impressive environmental aspect to their education. So when you think of the alternative schools as opposed to the public and private sectors, I have found that people who are about my age who went through those kinds of learning systems are more connected with their environment. They learned more about Hawaiian culture and language and practices because they're it's kind of like this. Hawaiian culture is like this. Everything is interwoven, and so your natural environment, the elements, are definitely incorporated into your education. I feel like once I got into Kamehameha and I started taking more of the native Hawaiian sciences and culture classes, that's when I started seeing more of that shift into environmentalism and learning about natural elements. That's when I realized, hey, oh my God, I didn't realize there was this whole aspect of my culture that I was missing because I was in public school the whole time. Because public school doesn't teach you to be an environmentalist, they teach you how to be a civilian. And a civilian isn't out there looking at water quality. They turn on a tap and there's their water, right? Like
Right.
you're going to school, you're going to work every day, you come home, you're cooking dinner, you're taking a bath, like that's your relationship with water. So my family, the big branch of my family that we're very close to, is on the Big Island in the Puna district. So
Mm-hmm.
my family is from Kalapana, which is in the Kaimu
Mm-hmm.
area. Basically lava flow, you're in the right spot.
Yeah.
So way back, let's go back to ancient days.
Mm-hmm.
Traditionally that area was just filled with farmers. It was a fishing village, but it's very hot and dry. I mean, it's just lava rock as far as the eye can see. And so where you get your water, like water is obviously going to be a commodity there. It is going to be very precious because it's hot,
Mm-hmm.
it's dry, it's desert. And what we know from, if you've seen like basic ahupua'a structure, right? It's the land is not like cut horizontally so much as it is vertically. So from the mountain top down to the ocean, that's kind of like these little slices. Your people, your village, your community kind of stayed within those boundaries, right? So if water is at its freshest up in the mountains, the people who live up there where it's lush and green and wet all the time, they're going to have an easy time collecting water. But by the time that water trickles down to the ocean, highly polluted, everyone's been using that water. Animals have kind of gone back and forth. It's fed a lot of the farms and stuff like that. So by the time water gets down to the ocean, it's not safe to drink. So if you have a community of people living down there, obviously they need to have access to fresh drinking water. My name comes in, Waipu ilani. So the name Waipu ilani, it means windblown water, which is very open to interpretation because it can go from water spout, which is like a literal water tornado, to a windblown cloud. And so for my family out there in Kalapana, this fishing village, these people who need access to clean water, they would just watch the horizon for a single water bearing cloud. They would put all of their calabash bowls into their canoes and they would paddle out this really rough surf.
Wow.
And they would collect the rainwater from that single cloud. And this was the water that sustained and nourished the community. I know now as an adult that I would have really flourished in more of a Hawaiian style setting, educational system. I would have really thrived in a charter school or Hawaiian immersion school just because that speaks to my soul. I think for any person who really channels their ancestors, they will definitely do better in that kind of educational setting just because it just feels right. And for me, having that relationship to elemental entities, having this cultural connection that I feel like many people have lost touch with, we each have that responsibility. It's this personal journey to reconnect back to that. And I feel like that's kind of where we're at. Like there's this hullying is happening, right? This canoe is about to flip over. Time to restart, right? So
yeah,
I am so excited to see that more people are kind of making that transition back to roots, because I think once that happens, we are going to see more of the cultural values coming through. I do think that in the future, we will kind of go back to that community mindset where it's not so much the big city with building sprawl. I think it's going to be like these little mini communities that are kind of spread out, and people will be putting their focus back into restoring water, restoring forest, trying to make sure that the aquifer is going to be okay, because obviously we're dealing with quite a number of issues right now. But I am optimistic. I am cautious, but I am optimistic that we will be able to kind of revert back to the old way. Especially as climate change does its thing, and more people are basically scared into submission. I do think that there will be a mass effort, especially here in the islands, just for us to reconnect with our culture, with our history, and with the natural environment. And I think stewardship will come into play again.
Everything that you were saying before was so beautiful. I love how you were talking about connecting to the island, how people are going back, how the canoe's going to flip over, there's going to be more community. Leah, do you want to share part of your story, or do you want me to share part of your story from my perspective?
You do it from your perspective. Okay, that'll be interesting.
All right. So Leia's getting ready to graduate high school, right? And we have this stupid show on YouTube called the Lamont N Leah Show. And like she breaks the news to me like, oh my gosh, I'm going back to Hawaii. I got in. I'm so excited. And my heart's breaking because like Leia's my sister. She's my best friend. I'm like, you're gonna leave me? You go to college? Oh, you just go to college here and we can stay connected? And like she's like, stop crying. It's important for me to go back and like connect to my ancestry. Like I feel like I haven't really gotten a chance to connect here. Like yes, I've done things with my family and my family, but there's not a real like stronghold connection. And so I think it's important for me to go back, learn and stuff. And she actually started in marine biology, but then switched to her passion, which is video and movie and stuff. But she felt that need, that call to go back. Yeah. So I thought it was beautiful that with everything that you were saying.
I think that's definitely true. Many people regardless of how long they've spent here. If you have ancestry in a place, or in your case, because you're a native Hawaiian to Hawaii, I think each of us feel that pull on the umbilical cord. You know, the physical severing may have happened, but the spiritual connection still exists, right? Because your ancestors piggyback on you all the time, right? Your connection through your po'opiko is your connection to your ancestral line, to the past. So regardless of where you go, you are going to maintain that connection with them. And they, like I said, they're persistent, right? They will do whatever they need to do to make sure that, you know, the message comes through, whether or not you're a psychically inclined person or not. I mean, like, I'm one of those people, I get kind of stubborn, so that kind of therefore makes me hard-headed. So sometimes they gotta like knock extra hard to make sure that I get these messages. But that internal call that you feel or you hear is I would say is universal to everybody.
In my notes, I had made a funny little joke about how we're gonna stray from the water topic,
Mhm.
and that I was like, I don't have a good segue, so let's talk about water.
Okay.
But actually, you actually did answer a few of the questions, so I'm just gonna go over what I had written, and then maybe we can fill in any like blanks that we had. We already started talking a little bit about how water is viewed through like the Hawaiian lens, yeah. Um, but are you able to like maybe elaborate a little bit like historically on the importance of water? Because like I think most people on like a very general scale understand, okay, yeah, water is important because you need to drink, you need to water the plants, you need to, you know, do whatever, you need a fish or anything. But is there any other like cultural significance that water holds?
Well, sure. Well, the Hawaiian word for water is vai, but when you double the word, so it becomes vai vai, that means double water, which translates into wealth. So water is wealth. If you don't
Okay.
have water, you are poor. Because like you said, right? Obviously, water sustains life. It sustains the plants, the animals, the community. If you don't have water, or you can't somehow get access to alternate forms of water, like rain or mist, or, you know, a river, you know, anything like that. If you're in a, like, especially for people who live on in drier areas, usually like on like the west side of the islands tends to be drier, right? Because the east side gets all the rain. You have to get really creative. And so looking at places where there were a lot of water, you can see the way it shapes a community. So there's this joke that kind of runs around the native community. It's like, you can tell who lives on the east side of an island and who lives on the west side of the island. You can tell where your ancestors are from based on your physical build. So if you are plump and juicy and momona like me, obviously I have been raised in an area that gets a lot of water. So for the most part, I live in Hilo. Hilo gets like super rain. Okay, like our raindrops get to be the size of softballs. So
Wow.
yeah, we get a lot of water, right? So my family being from Kalapana, but my mom was like, yeah, nope, sorry, lava life is not for me. We're gonna go into town. And so Hilo gets quite a bit of water, and
Mm-hmm.
so having family from wet places, yes, we are all juicy plump people. But then when you look at my friends or my distant cousins who live on the west side, everyone is thin, everyone is skinny, right? And it's because it's so hot and dry. And if you don't have a lot of water, you can't do a lot of food production. So everyone is going to be on the lean, lanky side. And everybody who lives in villages next to fresh water, they're going to be nice and juicy because they get plenty food to eat. So,
I
you know,
love that.
so if that doesn't impound the reason like why water is important, obviously it plays such a vital role in the community. And not just even like the physical side, but also like the spiritual side of things, right? Because water does have that spiritual element. When you are going through the journey of your life and you are having this experience amongst the elements, water will be vital to your experience. I mean, you are made up of water. When you
Yes.
are, you need water to get through the day, but also in the spiritual aspect, water is a big message, especially in your dreams, or if you do like vision kind of work. The water aspect, that is spiritual realm. That is how you are going to get access to a lot of like really important messages that maybe in your day-to-day, like, oh nope, sorry, all my spiritual blockers are off, I'm awake now, like I see what's in front of me. But in the spiritual realm, when you are, especially if you are dreaming that you are like near water, in water, or the animals that live in that water, are they talking to you? What kind of messages are you receiving? Water is usually the conduit. I like to say it is the connection, right, that's going to allow messages to come through. And so I don't think it's necessarily because I am also a water sign, I'm a Pisces, but I tend to have a lot of water dreams, and I receive a lot of messages through water dreams and water animals. Whether in my real life or in my dream life, the water is so important, because it doesn't matter if it is Vai, it doesn't matter if it is Kai, it is still the same. It is the same element. And so, because for me, that is the easiest way to communicate. That is how these water entities come to me, and that is how some of the deepest spiritual messages come to me, is through this water symbol in my dreams and in my real life. Some of the most magical, like spiritual kind things I can tell you about has incorporated water in some way. And I don't think it's necessarily just because, like, how you manifest things, like if you're focused on stuff, like, and it'll eventually, come to fruition. It's not just that. It's not just because I'm surrounded by lush forest. It's not just because I live on an island surrounded by water. I am conveniently located, yes, but I choose to be in tune with these rhythms, with these patterns, with these elements. I open myself up to this alternate experience. And so because of that, I have this passion, obviously. So with water from the Hawaiian perspective, it is not just about physical sustenance. It is also about spiritual sustenance. And so, I mean, looking at alternate cultures that have come into Hawaii, and they have kind of blended, right? It's a melting pot here now. And so you see the way they also incorporate water into their spiritual practices or into their everyday living. Many things are similar between us and other cultures. I think we all have a real respect. But for us, because we are here in the middle of the ocean, naturally, water is going to be that spiritual element for us, right? That is going to be the element that we're going to connect to, because at some point in time, you had to be connected to water people, because Hawaii is like in the middle of nowhere. Somebody had to be a navigator. Somebody had to be a sailor, in order for you to come here. My Japanese family, they came to work plantation. My English side of the family was when an admiral in the English Navy, he was bringing back the bodies of the tuali'i who died abroad in England. And of course, my Polynesian ancestors, they were navigating by canoe. So at some point in time, somebody had to cross water to get over here. So I highly recommend that anybody looking to make that connection, they do it through water, in there. But look at what your cultural practice says about water, because very likely that's going to expedite your process. That's going to expedite your experience, like that you're trying to achieve. So I would say, yeah, that it's definitely the spiritual aspect in addition to the physical.
So, Leah, I think your question was, for me, was, does it mean anything to me, right? What does water mean to me as an American living in the mainland, California? I'm not sure if I've ever given it a lot of thought, but water is my absolute favorite element. If I cannot be Aang or the, Avatar, I would want to be a powerful, waterbender, right? Water is so important. I remember, playing in water, growing up in water, even loving the beach as a young child at one time. I hate beaches now. Everyone knows I hate beaches now because, I I like California beaches are
I was about to say, I was like,
disgusting
who?
and gross, and then like I have sun issues and I have sand issues. But if I can just go to a pool and be in a pool of water all day, I am happy. Like, I love water. I love to swim. I love water so much, and it's very important to me. So, but I don't think I was taught to love water. Just something natural. In fact, if I think about my experiences with water, like they teach us the what's that? The cycle in school, the evaporation cycle. Is it called the water cycle?
Water cycle.
Yeah.
Okay, this is called the water cycle.
Magic School Bus.
Yeah, of the Magic School Bus. I still love that episode. Great
episode.
But yeah, like that's pretty much it. They don't tell us like how to clean it, how to like make sure we're getting fresh water or drinking water. We use a filter here on our faucet, but it's really not discussed or educated. It's not. There's not a main importance on water here, I feel, in my experience.
Yeah, I just know that I always loved like ocean life and everything. So as a kid, I would seek out stuff about conservation. I even found like little drawings I did as a kid going, we gotta save the whales. I started that, okay?
That's great.
But no, I don't remember actually being taught any of that. That was just something that I wanted to do because it was very interesting to me and beautiful to me. So, yeah, I think that we answered all of this all the questions I had in this section. But very interesting to see like the differences from like a Hawaiian cultural perspective, where like water actually is like has a meaning versus mainland California, or I guess just United States Western culture, where like, yeah, water's important, but like, yeah, it's there. But I think, speaking of water, we should all go take a water break, and then we'll come back, and we will continue talking about some other stuff I want to talk about, including some of the water issues that we are having in Hawaii and what we could possibly be doing about them if we are doing it right. Hello. I know that this audio is probably terrible and this isn't our usual location, but I am currently in my garage. I'm cleaning it out because it needs to be done. And I found something. I found a relic of the Lamont N Leah show. For those of you that are new to our podcast, the Lamont N Leah show is a show that Lamont and I had when I was in high school and he had just started college. We were very young. I believe I was maybe 15, 16 at the time. Lamont, not even 20 yet. Still in his late teens. Anyway, we had this. I'm just going to show you the clip. Roll the clip, okay?
Welcome to the Lamont N Leah show. This is Mr. Shnuffles. Hi, Mr. Shnuffles.
How dare you start the Lamont N Leah show without me?
Mr. Shnuffles.
I hate that tumor. It's a tumor. It's a tumor. Alright, anyways. Oh, snap, my glasses on. I got you now, Mr. Snuffles. You'll never work on this show ever again. Ah!
It's okay, I forgive you for killing Mr. Snuffles.
You do?
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
I found him under my bed. Mwah. My puppy took him. So, yeah, you're forgiven and stuff. So now we're gonna...
I think it's time to end the Lamont N Leah show.
Okay, bye.
I found him. I found Mr. Snuffles. So I'm going to surprise Lamont. That's today's activity. For those of you who are tuning into our audio portion of the podcast, I will leave a link to the first time we've met Mr. Snuffles which is, I believe, in our dream episode, I think we called it, of the Lamont N Leah show. I'll post a picture of him when this episode goes live, so you guys can check it out on our Instagram and our Facebook. But yeah, I'm going to surprise Lamont by calling him right now. I just realized that the audio was not playing, so that's fun. But Lamont answered. He was half asleep, and I feel really bad. But he was like, "Oh my gosh, it's Mr. Shnuffles." All right, thank you guys for entertaining me. Let's get back to the topic at hand.
Mr. Shnuffles, I didn't kill you. Yeah, that's when you were into sewing, right? Like you were.
I'm still into sewing.
Okay, but like you had just started. Like it was like kind of like a.
Yeah, I had just started. Like, for those of you who are listening to the podcast, you're not going to be able to see this, but I'm going to hold this up to the camera. I don't know if it can pick it up, but like, honey, what are these stitches? Oh my god.
But Mr. Snuffles is this thing that Leah sewed. He is pink and black with white ears. He has a safety pin and is stitched with love.
With love. Like, this was made in like the emo scene era, so like it's very like punk rock. Like, it was actually made out of like a striped shirt that I had, but it was like a cheap shirt, so it's like pilling, and I was like, what am I gonna do with this? So I cut the sleeves off, made Mr. Shnuffles, and like plushies were like a very big thing back then. So
yeah, so when you see this video, you're gonna see not a poser Leia, but like it might seem kind of poserish because like this is Leia having multiple identities, right? She's trying to like get into the emo identity while remaining a Christian, while remaining Hawaiian in her home. So you have this like all this inter like sectionality going on, and it's just young Leia.
it's just very funny.
And we're back. So, Leia, what's next?
All right. One of the reasons why we invited Brittany on our show today is because on the 21st of August is Hawaii Statehood Day. And for Lamont and our non-Hawaii listeners, you can probably guess that's the day, 1959, that Hawaii became the supposed 50th star on the United States flag. I know we could and should do a whole episode on Hawaiian history, pre-contact, post-contact, and overthrow. But I will leave a link in our show description so that you guys can read up on it if you are unaware, you don't know what I'm talking about. But I do want to just kind of like touch on it a little bit. And because Lamont is the sweetest boy, and I know he's looked into it a little bit, do you think you're able to paraphrase briefly what you remember about overthrow history? And then maybe we can fill in.
Yeah, so I got a chance to travel to Hawaii in high school, and we were on choir tour. And even before that, I had watched a few movies, and I don't think I was outraged as I am now, but there was definitely a change. And so in this movie, like, I could see the injustice and the racism that, like, these white people, the movie was called Diamond Head. It's like a super old movie. And I actually got to go on Diamond Head, like, walk it, which was nice. But anyways, and in this movie, this guy is like trying to fall in love with this girl who I think is a native of the island, but she's been Americanized or like colonized, her and her people, but so she could like go between both realms and like intercede for her people. But like there was a stirring in me, and so like I was like, well, what is this? Like, why did this happen to these people? That's not okay. And then like it kind of just connected like what happened to like America, the natives here, and slavery. It just kind of like, oh, like they do this all over the world. Like it just wasn't like these isolated incidents. This is who they are as people. Got it. And so, yeah, like the Hawaiians have been like they had to do a lot of work to get their island back under their control after being colonized by colonizers.
I think definitely this is definitely a topic for a more seasoned historian than myself, because again, remember, I had majority public education with the Department of Education, which is what? Hosted by what? United States. Yeah, so of course, we are going to get a very cultivated education, right? And so it's obviously going to paint America as being, the good guy, or not as bad of a guy as people with Native
they
experience.
Were helping.
In a sense, like it's the lesser of two evils, right? Like after all the trials and tribulations of being colonized by the other colonizers, America was like, hey, like we'll take it and we'll give them their freedoms back. Did they really give them their freedom?
Did they give us, or did they temporarily take away and said, oh yeah, you can have again, kind of a thing. I mean, like, it just, if I go back through the pages of my memory and I look at American textbooks, I can basically sum up my Hawaiian education to just a few pages, and they tend to highlight like American culture, like, or United States American culture specifically, tends to find like historical figures that they can talk about, but not necessarily the issues that surround it. So these historical figures that we were taught about in our textbooks in public school, they were not even necessarily Hawaiian. Very likely Kamehameha, because he's the guy who was seen as uniting all of the islands, or very inappropriately saying that he conquered all the islands, which is incorrect, because Kauai was not conquered. They actually gave themselves up, so to avoid a massacre, right? But the textbook doesn't tell you that. Then they want to talk about some Captain Cook action. Extreme colonizer. He was not our friend at all. Nope. Sir and his crew was extremely like about to die, and thank God they found the islands, and they were given fresh water and food and all that kind of stuff, but that wasn't enough. No, they had to spread syphilis and God knows what else through the Hawaiian community because they were asking for women, and then parading and misrepresenting themselves as a deity that he clearly was not. And then when he had the nerve to come back outside of that God season, well, we know what happened to him after that, right? Then they'll probably talk about Pearl Harbor a little bit, because of course that's the American stuff, right? Like, oh, our bases were bombed and all this kind of stuff. And so we just kind of get lumped in because there were military bases in that chapter. And some books, because between the different schools, they will have different textbooks. Some books will talk about the overthrow, but very like we're talking like maybe a couple of pages, and they'll probably have like one that standard picture of Queen Liliuokalani like sitting on her chair, and she's kind of like looking. That's it. Like that. I mean, I'm telling you.
Some of you guys that are listening, like Leia assumed the pose of the queen, so that's why I was laughing. Like if you're not watching, so.
We've all seen it. We've all seen that photo, right? Like, yeah. And it's like, I know that America itself has so much history because there are so many different groups of people and there are so many historical events. But I mean, I should know Hawaiian history inside and out. None of my ancestors were in the Civil War. Like, I am not descended from a plantation owner. Like, but why is that always the narrative, right? We hear about presidents. We hear about issues that are happening thousands and thousands of miles away. but they don't want to talk about what's happening in Hawaii. Because why? It's a very sticky issue. Like the entirety of our statehood situation, it is such a sticky issue. And now obviously that's like the sovereignty in me coming out. But it's like drawing on what you said earlier, right? Like it's, they do we get more freedoms? Do we get more, of anything? Did we advance when the United States absorbed Hawaii into the Union? Ooh, that's a loaded issue, friends. Hawaiian mentality is, oh, you're here, let us help you, let us share, because it's good to share. And
right.
we all have access to these resources. We can all go and fish in the sea. We can all drink this clean water and bathe at the waterfall. All of this food is so abundant. We can easily share because you guys are just getting settled here, right? But there was never this idea of ownership, and there was never this idea that it's your way or the highway kind of a thing, right? We were all inclusive. And that was kind of our downfall, I think, to some degree, is that we were so welcoming. We showed so much aloha that actually ended up being like the downfall of civilization as we knew it at that time. Once this Western mentality of ownership came in, previously Hawaiian culture had been all about stewardship. You would fight for control to be a steward, a manager of resources, not to own it, because nobody could own anything. You came in naked, you go out naked, like you can't, how do you own water? How do you own land? Like that was it just wasn't conceivable to our early ancestors, right? So very similar with Native American cousins, right, on the continent, right? Like people are like, oh, here, sign this paper, just draw a little X, and not realizing, oh, you're giving me 5 beads. Like, oh, but this is thousands of acres of land. What? How do you own something like that? Like we all have access to this, right? So it's very similar kind of situation. But then, greed, right? It always comes down to greed. It only took a couple of greedy American businessmen to just ruin the whole thing. Like they just ruined it for everyone. And so when we have the overthrow situation, I mean, like, and now these guys who did what they did, and their descendants know what they did, they had been set up by the Hawaiian monarchy. They had these positions of power. They were living comfortably. Like Hawaii and the United States, as it was at that time, had very friendly relations. Like I am learning, so I'm reading Hawaii Story by Queen Liliuokalani. I am learning so much. Like she was actually at the time prior to the overthrow, she was very interested in America, and like they had museums and buildings, that everyone was very hospitable. They were treated very kindly. I mean, like it was such a big deal to be hosting Hawaiian royalty, right? They just had all the bells and whistles, and they were always welcome wherever they went. So prior overthrow, Hawaiians had a very positive like relationship with the American government, and it was just easy relations. People were coming back and forth all the time. Like it's just a boat ride, a couple of days and you'll be in a new place, right? So, once the overthrow happened, those people who were involved, they just wanted more, put it that way. So they sought to overthrow the government, and over a series of years, that's what happened. And now that we've gone from a territory, I think was like 1898, and then we were made a state in 1959. The transitional process it's not on the up and up. It's not like with other states, right? We're a state, but it's uncomfortable because the legality, right? It's kind of like the bigger entity said, okay, well, you're a state now. But many Hawaiian scholars, historians will say, actually, no, that is incorrect. That's why you hear the term, show me the treaty. How do we make a mistake? So like so obviously I'm not getting into depth with this. I'm just giving very general information, but because we have these platforms now, right? Obviously sharing information, it's happening like that. And it's never been a lean back and just take it kind of a thing. That's energy, but it's just never talked about. And so when people, were taken by surprise, I guess, about like the Mauna Kea issues, right? It's not to say that there aren't scientifically minded Hawaiians, because Hawaiians are very scientific, but it's just that we don't believe that one science should has more importance over the quality of life for everyone else, right? Because it goes back to that idea of stewardship. If what you're doing is not pono, we should not be doing it. And again, because these telescopes are sitting at the top of a mountain, which is home to quite a large aquifer that feeds water to the entire island, we have that same issue, water. Why do you guys have to put fuel right above a water aquifer? Why do you guys have to put your telescopes right above a water aquifer? It's just, because if you are doing the tourist thing here in the islands, you will pass military bases. You will go to Pearl Harbor. You will see the oil still seeping into the ocean. You can see that right? When you go to see the memorial. I mean, it's very somber. It's very sad. But my inner environmentalist was like, "What is that rainbow sheen on the ocean?" It's really bad. And there are some areas where the water is so polluted. If it splashes you, if you're paddling and somebody splashes you, you're gonna get a rash. if you can get any kind of flesh-eating bacteria. I mean, it is a real concern, and people are just so stuck in the travel magazine and the pamphlet mentality. They see these beautiful stories that people are sharing on their social media platforms, but obviously they're not going to talk about the Alawai Canal and how they almost lost their leg to a flesh-eating disease, right? Nobody wants to talk about that. Everyone wants to say that the people who are, sign waving and picketing in front of what we deem to be sacred spaces as radicals, but they are outside our experience. It's easy for me to look at this and see what's going on in other parts of the world, and I'm like, oh God, what a complicated situation, or oh God, that sucks, or oh my God, what are those people thinking? But it's easy to view it because you have that barrier, right? But when you're in it, I live in Hawaii, my water is probably poisoned or will be. I may not be able to have children who will have access to clean water. Even though these issues are tied to certain communities within the islands, all of these systems are connected. Our islands are connected to a ring of fire. That's why we will always have active volcanoes here. It's the same thing with our water. Our water is connected. And so when I see these outside entities who are trying to come here to develop or to, do whatever, and they do their environmental study, or they send out an expert, to come and do a report to justify why it's okay for them to come and do the things they do, I always got to ask the next question is where is this expert from? Are they from here? Did they just come here, get the degree, and then they bounced? Right. Do they actually have the cultural knowledge? Because the university can only do so much for you, right? So it's everything to do with Hawaii is complicated. There is nothing easy about being a Hawaiian. There is nothing easy about the government system, the military, environment. Nothing is easy here. You got to be a fighter if you're going to stay here, because if not, as we see what's happening now, right? People knew about Red Hill years ago, but it's still a problem. And the military is coming up with a million reasons why we have to just keep ourselves in place. They're trying to buy themselves more time while our water is being poisoned in real time.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask Lamont, have you heard about the Red Hill situation, or even the Pearl Harbor leakage, or...
The Pearl Harbor leakage, yes. I don't know about the Red Hill situation, but I know that we have been, America has been poisoning our oceans for a long, long time. Why not start in Hawaii? It just makes sense.
Yeah, so I'll just briefly tell you about that, because it's actually something that's ongoing. I wouldn't say it just happened, but we just had a huge, one of them started leaking, and hold on, I wrote down the date. Where did it go?
It's
November.
Yeah, the fuel
Yeah.
tanks.
Yeah, so it was November of last year, like thousands of gallons of like jet fuel leaked into the water, and it impacted like 90,000 residents, including families that lived in like the military housing. So like it wasn't just, you know,
Right.
the Hawaiian local people, Hawaiian native people. It was also like the military families.
And then all those ecosystems.
Yeah, like that's not even including the damaged like ecosystem. I'm just talking about like residential families. But like it was so bad some people even like left. They're just like, we can't live here. It smells so bad. We have zero water. We can't shower. We can't make food or anything. And like it was just astounding because like there were community organizations that were doing more to assist the families that didn't have access to water anymore than the actual like Navy was doing.
So has the Navy started to do anything about it? A year and something later?
So there's a lot of like going back and forth right now, like legalese sort of like stuff, going back and forth on whether they're gonna like decommission it or clean it or fix it or take it out.
Clean it.
Thank you. But no, like people, especially in the Native Hawaiian community, are asking for them to decommission it, empty it, get rid of it. We don't want it because it's been happening for, and I wrote that down too, since the 1940s. So they were built. There are how many? There are 20 tanks that are like, how tall are they? They are 250 feet tall by 100 feet wide, and there are 20 tanks that are full of jet fuel, and 18 of them are actually still being used.
Okay.
So they're like,
but 2 of them were the ones that leaked?
I don't know. I don't remember that part, but doesn't
I'm gonna
matter.
be honest, like all of their infrastructure, I mean, American infrastructure in general needs to be overhauled because like all of the progress we were seeing, you know, in like the World War II era, right, where a lot of like manufacturing was up and coming. Everybody was connected to the grid. We had like excellent electrical access, excellent plumbing access. The military facilities were all new, right? Infrastructure needs constant maintenance, and these fuel tanks, like so many other aspects of Hawaii's infrastructure, has been neglected. And nobody wants that very unglamorous work, right? You think about politicians, right? They want to do what's going to, I hate to say this, make them look good, right? Because when they look good, that's when they get reelected, right? So they want to do,
so clean up the water and look good.
Yeah, you would think, right? But no, apparently sewage and water treatment, roads being fixed, apparently that is not glamorous work, but it is very necessary work.
Yeah.
And so, you know, nowadays it's all about civics, right? About like social injustice and, you know, COVID stuff. I mean, like when you look at who is running for governor, I mean, we've got seasoned politicians, we've got people with medical experience, we've got a UFC fighter, you know, like just this idea, right, that anybody can run for office. Yeah, like, but nobody wants to talk about the very necessary issues, which is sustenance, right?
Yes.
We need to be able to maintain, right? So everyone wants to focus on the housing crisis, but there is so much more to that. I mean, you give me a house, I have to pay for it. The house has to be running. Like these people in the military house, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for them because they were not able to turn on a tap without fuel coming out.
Yeah.
And so many of these families were forced to relocate. So I attended a couple of the virtual meetings that was being hosted by the garrison on Facebook. And there were so many moms. Like I thought the panel was gonna get like grounded. Like the moms were not playing. Okay. And there were some families who were like, oh, okay, what about relocation? Because I can't raise my kids here. My husband is deployed. And my first thought was like, well, how nice for you. You can just be relocated. What about the rest of us?
Yeah, what about I don't get it. Like, all I'm hearing is there's a major issue in the ocean. People can't live there. The island is unlivable. If this continues, it's going to spread. Like, come on! Look at Moana. And that wasn't even like a real life thing. The darkness spread from island to island, destroying the islands because the heart wasn't there, right?
Yeah.
Our heart is our water source, ecosystems and stuff. If it's not cleaned up, it's just going to spread and destroy the island, and people are going to die. This place is going to die. I don't get it. I'm just what's going on here?
Well, see, the thing is, it comes back to what it always comes back to, right? Which is control, right?
Greed, money, power, control.
So the rhetoric here is, well, if our military is not there, who will protect Hawaii? China will come for you, or whoever else the bad guy is, right? In that scenario. Another popular comment I see, well, if it wasn't the US, it would have been Japan. And I'm like, okay, you know what? Just slow your roll, because we was friends with everybody prior to America getting involved, remember? But no, they don't want to talk about that in history class. So what we're hearing is that there is a lot of community support, not just civilian, but also military family support, because obviously these people were they were hospitalized for a variety of reasons. Like, when their plants started dying, they were like, oh, that's weird. Then their pets started dying. And then that was like, oh my God. And then all these physical things were happening, and they were hospitalized, like adults and children. And the military command did not just say, okay, we got to pause everything, right? And I have to say that just seems kind of to be on track with the military. They use you to do what they need to do, and they'll move your family around, because if they take care of your family, then you'll stay with them, right? But they just treat soldiers like bodies to do what they need to do to move this machine. I mean, look at all these lawsuits that are coming out now with Camp Lejeune, right? Toxic water, now decades later. Now, Hawaii might be the next Camp Lejeune, but I'm seeing that there's a lot of pushback for not just from civilians, not just from military families, but also government entities, also from the Board of Water. They are also like, can you decommission this yesterday? And so the military thought that we were getting too big for our britches, kind of a thing. And they tried to sue us for trying to make them remove the fuel in these tanks. So they poisoned our water system, and then they tried to sue us for telling them to get the fuck out. Do we not see something wrong with this picture? And then then they're like, oh, okay, actually, we're not going to sue now, but we have to set up a plan, and it's going to take several years for this to happen. And it's like, according to the Board of Water Supply, you could have all of these tanks drained within a couple of days. What's the holdup? Because for the military, they're such a big entity. They have so much money. For them, well, if we don't have it, we'll just import it. We'll ship it, right? We're the Navy, right? Well, you want to keep your bases here because of strategic placement. I understand that. But what are you going to do? Keep shipping in bottles of water from outside because you've poisoned a perfectly good water system here? They didn't even have water for their own soldiers and their families. They were telling those people they had to ration water, or they were telling people to go to the hotel or the, whatever, or to go relocate to areas where the water was not going to be an issue, and they were going to reimburse them. Well, on these meetings I was attending, and in conversations I was having with families who were doing just that, the military was very slow on those reimbursements. They had maxed out credit cards. They had been in these hotels for months. And honestly, water flows downhill, right? So it may just be affecting the military base today, but because water systems are connected, other parts of the communities will likely also be affected. I would just tell everybody, if there's one takeaway from this, I don't care where you live, on the islands or not, test your water. Just test it.
Yes.
Because you don't know. You just don't know, because American infrastructure is failing, and it is an outdated system. Nobody wants to do the very necessary, expensive, unglamorous work that is required. But guess what? It's hard to say you're a first world country when you don't have access to basic necessities. And that's crap.
Absolutely.
And was this a problem prior to American rulership? No. There was no homelessness. There was no problems getting access to clean water. There was no problems getting access to food. We were very self-sufficient. We had like successful trade agreements with other, I mean, like we were set here. So that's why water issues like what we have today are such a problem, because the community is telling the higher ups what's happening, but nothing's being done about it. It is an inefficient system. Yeah. So very long answer.
Yeah. Very long answer, but very, very, very relevant. And to wrap this up, I'm just thinking of a clip from Delivers from Eva, where she goes into this kitchen. This kitchen's very messy, and she tells this guy basically to clean it up. So our message to Pearl Harbor and the United States and all our beaches is you need to clean it up.
So, why don't you think of me as your mom right now? And Mama says, clean it up!
And that's it. Clean it up.
That's us, friend. That is like a tablespoon worth of Hawaii culture, history, society. That is like there's so much going on. I mean, it's hard to condense the complexity of Hawaii within just one discussion. Obviously, it's been ongoing for several decades by many thousands of people. Everyone has something to say about it. So that's why I feel like it's so important with people who have these experiences they need to share, right? So obviously, my father is a white American man. My mom is like a native Hawaiian woman with like sovereignty background, right? And so being raised with these two sides, like I was trained from childhood to see it from both sides. But at the same time, you have to acknowledge when something is wrong, it is still wrong, right? And so, you know, I'm hoping that there will be resolution in the future. I am hoping that the damage that has been done can be reversed. Not saying that would be easy by any means. It is going to be an ongoing issue, much like our native cousins on the continent who are dealing with pipelines. Like, why you have to run a pipeline over a lake is like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, it really does not. And especially when these companies have a history of negligence. We're not dealing so much with a private company as we are the United States military, which also has a very seasoned history of mistakes, right? We got to manifest, friends.
Yes.
Everywhere. That water rights everywhere. That environmental rights everywhere. Save the trees. Save the rocks. Save the deserts. Because every ecosystem is so important.
It is.
If we can just get that out there. If you know what? I'd like to see a Green Party candidate. Let me just throw that out there while I'm here. Like, if Uncle Bernie Sanders doesn't make it to the big president office, can we get a a Green Party somebody in office? I think we need it. Climate change is happening, whether they want to admit it or not. Like, yeah, we definitely need to have that shift. And so while everyone's like, oh yeah, we're going into the 5D experience, and oh yeah, we're going to spiritually upgrade. I'm like, okay, but what about the physical stuff? Because the physical stuff needs an upgrade. Okay.
I feel you.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. It has been such a good conversation. I'm gonna try to say your name. Okay. Waipu ilani?
Yes! All right,
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on the Lamont N Leah podcast. Is there anything you're currently working on that you would like to share with us or our listeners or viewers?
I would say, well, you know, I go wherever the wind takes me, right? Remember, I'm that water bearing cloud. Wherever the wind goes, that's where I'm going to. So I would just say, you know, it really is that saying, work with what you have where you are. If you see something in front of you that is needing correction, needing attention, that is for you to malama, because it was put in your path for a reason. So whatever that social issue is, that environmental issue, if you see lack somewhere and you're feeling that calling to it, regardless of what it is, you don't have to be committed to that issue your entire life. Maybe you might come and go, But whatever that thing is in front of you, if you can do something to improve it, if you can make a difference somewhere, and if all of us do that same thing, we can do big things together. We really can do big things. Even though we're small, we can do big things. And if anybody wants to disagree with that, I'm like, hey, look at the ants. Look at what they can do, okay? And there are like so many.
All right, that's an amazing system in and of itself.
Yeah. So that, I mean, we can each do what we can do, right? We're not expected to be the hero. We don't have to answer for everything that has happened, but as long as we have lungs that can breathe and I can stand up today, I can do something. And this is what I want to do. If it means stopping at every single stall at the farmer's market so that local farmers can stay in business another day, you can do that. If it means bringing your metal utensils to work when you eat lunch every day so you don't have to take a single-use item, do that. Like, we can each do something small and we can make those changes. And, you know, maybe you might not be living glamorously, but you can sleep at night knowing that you're doing something. It doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be the star of a movie or a magazine cover. You can do something small and it will have big impact down the road. That's what I would say. Everybody can do something.
I agree. If someone wanted to get a hold of you to, I don't know, pick your brain about anything else, or even just like follow you, I know you mentioned earlier that you're trying to like spread like Hawaii knowledge and everything. If people wanted to follow you, get in contact with you, how could they do that?
Well, they can definitely follow me on TikTok right now because that is the app that has my attention at Waipu Ilani. I would say, you know, if they want to message me, you know, through the app or anything like that, you know, I will converse with real people. But if your account is on private and you don't have a real picture, well, that looks kind of scammy to me. So I'm probably not good. So I would just say, yeah, like I'm open to conversing with people. Like, that's definitely not a thing. But I just I want to have real meaningful conversation, because the whole point of me doing all of this learning and doing all of this sharing is because I have hope for Hawaii, right? I want people to care about what happens here. I want people to care about wherever they are, because if we all care, then that's where the real change is going to happen. So that is my words there. So message me on the app, on TikTok, or I guess if somebody gets in touch with you because they see your podcast, then you're more than welcome, I guess, to connect us. Maybe we'll have another conversation. But yeah, so I'm going to stay on social media as long as Spirit allows me. But once I have to commit to my apprenticeship and I'm on to Kahuna life, well, sorry, the Kahunas did not have all this fancy tiny when they were doing their stuff. So I would just say, feel free to reach out to me and message me on any of my platforms under my name. And we will see where we go. If you guys have questions, you know, it's a small community. Like, Hawaii is in the middle of nowhere, but everybody knows everybody. So, you know, I mean, obviously us Hawaiians have connected here to be at each other, but here we are having this conversation. So, so definitely reach out to me at any point in time through here or on the apps.
All right. And as always, we will have that link in our show description so that you guys can easily just access that page.
Excellent. Once again, thank you so much, Waipu Ilani, for being on our show.
You're very welcome. Thank you guys for having me.
Today's life lesson is life is just like water. Life, just like water, is fluid. We are also in a constant flow on a continuum of time, from experience to experience. Think about it. Stagnant water develops a stench over time. We, like water, must flow to keep our essence alive. So how are you flowing through life? How are you managing? How are you keeping your spirit free? These are the things we need to do to continue a good life. So be like water and flow. And that is today's life lesson.